Hey there, welcome to the second episode. Today I'm going to be talking about shapes. Shapes are a crucial part of any possible project that you might be working on, so I thought I should cover it as soon as possible. Here on the toolbar on the left corner you have this button called Shape. When you click on it, you can see all of the predefined shapes that Sketch offers us, and I'm going to be creating one of each kind and see what options do we have. Of course, you can always create a custom shape made by either grouping or manipulating an existing one. So in theory, you can create an infinite number of different objects, and I'm going to be showing how to do that later on this episode. So let's start with a line. That's the first on the list. When you click on line, you can see the little cursor there ready for you to draw it. If you click, hold, and drag, you can create a line. Now, if you hold the Shift key while doing it, as you can see, you will always get a straight line. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a line, and here it is. A line is the most basic object that you can create. As you can see, you don't have that many options. So here you have the coordinates of point 1, that would be this one, the length of the line, and the coordinates of point 2. And because it's a line, you can't fill it, so the only option they have is actually the border, and that's the line itself. You can give it a size, and you can give it a color, and you can give it even shadows. But that's it for lines. Next is an arrow. An arrow works exactly like a line, but you will get the little arrow itself on the end. So as you can see, now you have fill. You're not going to be actually filling the line itself, you're just going to be filling this little area here on the arrow, as you can see. So the options that you have, you can define the start arrow and the end arrow. You have 3 different kinds of arrows, so I'm going to be choosing this one, and we can leave this one. And we can even modify the joints of the arrow itself. That would be the little corners here, as you can see, and you can even make it like a dashed arrow. Now, in my opinion, an arrow is a pretty useless shape because you don't have that much control over it, so you can change, for example, the size of the head. And I would suggest, if you really want an arrow, I would suggest you create your own one, and I'm going to be showing how to do that later. So next we have a rectangle. A rectangle is probably the shape that you're going to be using the most. So when you're creating it, again, you can hold Shift to make a square. So both sides are going to be the same size. And you can see now we have a lot more options. Here's the coordinates of the shape itself. Here is it for you to rotate it, and the size, the width, and the height. And on these fields, you have 3 to 4 different ways of inputting, of changing the value. So you can either just type the value itself and press enter. You can use the little arrows here. You can even use math. So let's say I'm gonna say 100 times 2. Press enter. It will do that for you. And you can even click inside it and drag it up and down for it to change the value. So here we have a more organic instant feedback of what you're seeing. So, and you can either change it by pressing up and down on the keyboard. So yeah, on the rectangle you can fill it with a color or gradient. You can give it a border, shadows, blurs, and reflection, all of that. Next we have an oval. If you click and drag it, again you can hold Shift to make a perfect circle. And this little lock here, I should probably talk about it. So now we have a perfect circle, right? So if I change this, I'm going to put 500 width, you can see it changes the width. But if I click on the lock here, and if it's locked, it will keep the same proportion of width and height. So if I change now the width, it will change proportionally the height. So this way, this example, we will always have a perfect circle. Next, we have rounded. and that's basically just a rectangle with round corners. Actually, it's exactly like a rectangle, but it will have a predefined value for the border radius, in this case 10. Of course, you can always do that in the rectangle itself. As you can see, you still have that option, so it's just a quicker way to get a rectangle with rounded corners. Next, we have a star. Now this gets a little more interesting. A star, as you can see, you have two new sliders. This is going to be the radius, the angle, this little angle here. So if you change it, as you can see, it gets fatter or slimmer. Probably shouldn't use that term. And you can change the number of points of the star. So it comes, the default is 5. You can get it up to 50. So get a little funky shape there. And all of the fills and borders and shadows, whatnot, you still have all of that. Next, we have a polygon, and that works pretty much the same as a star. You can change the number of points that it has. We have a triangle. Again, pretty obvious what you can do with it. Here you have a little checkbox. If you check it, what we'll do is all of the angles, the inside angles of the triangle, will stay the same value. Next, we have a spiral. Now, personally, I never found a use for this shape, as you can see. So you can fill it, or maybe not. That's pretty weird. And you have these 3 sliders. You can set the begin point, you can set its size, and the strength of the angle that it curves. So yeah, for me, I never found the use for this, but actually, if you did, I would love to hear how are you using this. Send me a tweet or something. I have some links in the show notes, as always, or post a comment below. I would love to hear that. So these are all the predefined shapes that Sketch offers us. But as I told us before, I spoiled you, that you can create any kind of shape. So I give you the example of the arrow. I said that you probably would want to create your own arrow. And how can you do that? Well, let's do it now. So an arrow is basically a rectangle and a triangle. So let's create those. I'm going to be creating a rounded rectangle here, something like that, and a triangle, something like this. I'm going to rotate it, set it to 90. Oh, actually, minus 90. And now we have an arrow. Well, not so much. These are 2 shapes. This is not an arrow. So what can you do? You can select both of the shapes and click on Union. What that will do is combine both of the shapes into a new shape. So when I click it, as you can see, we have a new one. And you have a little drop-down menu there. So when you click that, you can see both of the previous shapes. But yeah, now this is a new shape. This is an arrow. You can actually, here, you can change the name. If you double click on the name, you can type your own name. So what more options? You saw that I click on Union, but what if I click on Subtract? Well, that will subtract the triangle to the rectangle. What if I click on Intersect? You will get only the common area of both of the shapes, and the difference is, well, the opposite of intersect. Now, you might say, listen, subtract is cool, but what I wanted was actually the opposite result. I wanted to subtract the rectangle to the triangle. Well, this can be a little tricky at first to wrap your head around it, but the way that I would explain it to you is the shape on top will be, in this case, subtracted to the shape on the bottom. So if you want the opposite result right now, so if we want to subtract the rectangle to the triangle, we would just simply move the rectangle up in the hierarchy, and there you go. Now, you can say, yeah, that's cool, that's an arrow, but actually I wanted to have round corners all around. So we have the round corners of the rectangle here, but not on the triangle. So how can we do that? When you click on triangle, if you press the return key, or actually you could just click on edit. You see you have these little circles here in the corners, and when you click on one of it, you can see you have a little more options here. Now, I'm not going to be talking in depth about all of these options. That's going to be for a future episode, but I'm just going to tell you that you can click on this last one. It actually looks like a round corner. So when you click on it, that's it, you get a round corner. And here's the value for the border radius. So I'm going to set it to 10. And there you go. So if you want to make a triangle with round corners, just select all of the corners. I'm holding shift while pressing it to select all of them. I click on this little button, give it the value, and there you go. Round corners. Actually, I'm gonna set the same value so it stays a little better. That's it. So, to sum up, how can we create a new shape? Very quick. I want to be creating a donut shape. So, I create a circle, holding shift, create a circle. I'm going to create another smaller circle inside of it, center it, select both of them, click subtract. There you go. If you were not familiar with all of this, I highly suggest you just open up Sketch, create a bunch of different shapes and play with it. Try to unite some of them, subtract one to another, and just get your head around it, and you can see you can create some pretty cool stuff. On the next episode, I'm really excited about this. We're gonna have an episode by CJ Malagrito. I hope I'm not butchering the name here, the pronunciation, but he's gonna show us how to create a 3D icon. So be sure to check that out next week. So I hope to see you there.